What up, my friends? Day 157. No excuses 2024. Forgot my damn selfie stick. Trying to get used to using that damn thing. Whew, just out here. The pond of the goose. It's a beautiful day out. I had like a online, well, in the comments, like discussion with a friend of mine about media, right? They were talking about Democracy Now! And I was like, man, they've been real disappointing. I forget what I said. It was kind of sarcastic, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I can't believe you're still supporting them. But, and she was like, well, we can't all just watch TYT, the Young Turks. I haven't watched the Young Turks in years. I used to, right? And, but I was like, nah, I don't watch them. This is who I watch. And I listed off like, 6 or 7 different independent news sources, journalists, right? Like actual journalists, like people who actually like read and write stories and stuff, right? But there was a couple of right-leaning voices on there, like Tucker Carlson and Glenn Greenwald, right? And I'm like, and then she came back with like, well, I don't think any of those people have my interest at heart, right? And now, mind you, I'm sure she doesn't know who most of the other ones are, like Aaron Matei, Max Blumenthal, Katie Harper, things like that, like people on the left, Jimmy Dore, and but she saw like Glenn Greenwald and Tucker Carlson. She's like, none of those people have my interest at heart, and blah blah blah, right? And she's a black woman, but like, grew up in a really nice part of Cambridge and this and that, whatever. It doesn't really matter, right? But I'm just saying. So like. And like I felt the same way years ago. I used to watch Democracy Now! All the time, PBS News, BBC, NPR of all sorts. I would watch MSNBC. And then I noticed, like right around when Obama got in office, there was a big shift, right? And like I still thought that a lot of these agencies were on the left, and I was like, oh, look, they have conservative views and they have left, liberal views and blah, 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 blah. And I didn't realize that they had moved, what conservative was and what left was, because they figured out that if they didn't capture the so-called left, the Democratic Party, after the debacle of weapons of mass destruction, that they wouldn't be able to do their forever wars, a little excursion here, one here, fund this one, pull funding from that one, get what outcome you want. And then, so she had listed off all of the news sources that she watches. And the only one that I was really surprised about was Fox, right? But the rest of them, CNN, MSNBC, PBS News, BBC, like all of the, CBS, NBC, ABC, and just like all of the mainstream stuff, And, then I could understand. Because she's on the left, and but what the left used to be, she still assumes that that's what it is. Anti-FBI, anti-CIA involvement around the globe. Should we have intelligence agencies? Sure. Should they be doing the things that they're doing? Probably not, right? It's okay to be informed. It's for intelligence, not for freaking overthrowing governments and shit, But anyway, and that, taxpayer money should work for taxpayers here in the United States. And they still think that, and there's truth in media and all this other stuff, and trust in our institutions, and they're actually run by the people that are voted into office, and we actually have a democracy of choice, but really we only have, and now it's that, neo-libs and neo-cons, right? So they both have the same, trajectory. They just have different routes of taking it, And that's the thing about all those news sources like NPR and Democracy Now! And PBS News and BBC and all the rest of them, Microsoft, NBC, and all of them, like, they've all changed their trajectory, right? You can't really talk bad about, the deep state and the war machine and the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry and the military industrial, industry and defense contractors, So what they focus on is they focus on like, oh, well, you're not going to be able to get an abortion, or your trans kid isn't going to be able to chop his nuts off, or whatever else, that gets people riled up, especially if you have, if you're black, you're like, oh, they're fucking taking our rights. Well, that's what they keep telling people, and I ask people all the time, no matter if they're male, female, black, white, Asian, Hispanic, I'm like, what can I do in this country that you can't, right? We have laws against discrimination, I mean, sure, you got to prove things and this and that, that's okay. But, like, there's laws against that shit, for the most part. Are you going to run into individual bigots here and there? Probably, sure. I mean, I've run into them on every color spectrum there is. I come from a very unique background. I didn't grow up in a white neighborhood. I didn't grow up in a nice neighborhood. I grew up in the projects where I was a minority, and I mean, and like I get no ill will against any of that stuff, and the things that happened and some of the racial stuff that was said and blah 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 blah. Like, it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? Kids were kids, man. We were all in a fucked up situation. But they have us focusing on all that stuff, racial issues, religious issues, instead of what's truly important, which are class issues. So I understand when I hear from a lot of my, that used to be pretty extreme left, when I hear them, with their little Ukraine flag and, oh, Gaza this, and, and I'm not saying that any of those things, shouldn't, grab your attention or whatever. It's just research into it. That's all I'm saying. Like, if you look into stories and you look from voices that you don't usually listen to, or maybe you might detest them, right? Like, that's fine. But like, I'm watching these interviews of people like Eric Prince from like Blackwater and all this stuff. Like, I watched the interview. I don't like him more than I did before, right? I mean, I still detest him for a lot of the stuff, but he let out some really good information, and like, so my point being is that, me not liking him was just kind of reinforced. Like, he wasn't unlikable as a person. I just don't like his, political agenda, let's say, and Blackwater's a paramilitary organization and blah 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 blah, right? Privatized, yada yada yada. Anyway, it's just not my thing, right? Not my cup of tea. But he had some information that I was interested in seeing, and that's the point, right? So, like, if you see stuff that's counter to what you believe in, right, it either reinforces your argument to begin with, right? So now you have all the information and you can decimate somebody else in a debate, right? Or the difficult part is you have to change your mind with the new information and kind of assimilate that and figure out. And then you got to kind of look into what other things have you been lied to about, what other things were you believing that now you're like, well, maybe they were lying about that as well. How's it going? Good. But and that's why I say you gotta examine it all, even if it's, Malcolm X said it, right? He said, I don't care. He goes, I just want the truth. I don't care who delivers it, right? He didn't care, and he was talking about, like, white Southerners or liberals from the North or black leaders. He's like, as long as I hear the truth, that's all I care about. And I know, because believe me, I used to watch all of those news sources that she listed, religiously. But even after a while, I started noticing the hypocrisy. I started noticing a slight deviation off of, actually talking about the powers that be and kind of like aligning with them a lot, and a lot of that happened during COVID as well. It happened before that, but I'm just saying, like, it was really noticeable then, in the Russia collusion stuff and, that whole bullshit, and just how they covered the mostly peaceful riots of 2020 compared to like January 6th. And there's a lot of stuff. Kyle Rittenhouse, George Floyd, and in a lot of ways, it changed the information that I know now to be true, and what I thought before was to be true has totally changed, right? It's done a 180, and I've assimilated information. So that makes me look into every other story. Like, people are like, why are you so suspicious, Adam? Well, look how many times they've done it to us. Anyway, but it was I can see it. I understand where people come from. I was captured the same way, and it is noticeable. Once you see it, it's hard to unsee it. All right, everybody. I hope that was informative to you. Day 157, man. No excuses 2024, man. Get out there and do something, you know, do something strenuous, change your life, change your reality, change your world. Peace.